Alright, so for the first structure I want to show you with this sheep brain here is the dura mater. The dura mater is one of the meninges that surround the brain, and it's this white layer that you actually see on the brain here. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to try to dissect off the dura mater and show you more of the internal structures. But before I do that, I want to just show a few more structures that we could see on the external surface of the brain here. So these large structures here is just part of the ethmoid here, and I believe these little spaces that you see here are like the ethmoid sinuses. And if you remember, the olfactory nerves are going to be going through the foramina, the cruciform foraminas. So you could have the olfactory bulbs. We'll later dissect this off to actually expose the olfactory bulbs there. These two structures here are going to be going to the eye. So what you see here, majority of this is the orbital fat that surrounds the eye. You could kind of see the optic nerve going through it, like right there. It's the optic nerve. And so I'll be taking some of this off so that we could expose the internal structures a little bit better. You can also see right in the middle here, this is where the pituitary gland is located at, and I'll show you more regarding to that later as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and start dissecting this off. All right, so if you take a look at what I have here, this was where the pituitary is at. Unfortunately, I accidentally pulled it off, but you'll notice where it attaches to. There's that infundibulum, as you can see over here. And then if I were to put it right over here, right, it will be hanging off right where that little hole is right there. Okay, so the infundibulum would be coming from where that hole is. And then the pituitary will be hanging from there. Okay, I'll do a mid-sagittal cut next, but before I do that, let's go ahead and name some of these structures here. Let's first go over the different lobes. The first lobe over here is the frontal lobe. Right here will be where the parietal lobe is going to be at. Okay, we have the temporal lobe over here. Occipital on the posterior side. Okay, and with the insula, we won't be able to look at it unless I go a little bit deeper. But let's look at the different spaces here. So down the middle here is the longitudinal fissure, right? That separates the cerebral hemispheres. You also have the transverse fissure right here. Okay, do kind of doesn't shown that well, but there should be a lateral sulcus where this location is at here. And what you see, the little like black lines here, that's the arachnoid mater that you kind of see, and then this little really glossy, shiny kind of layer that you see, it's part of the pia mater that's on the brain itself. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at other structures that we can see on this external view. Okay, we have the olfactory bulbs here. The olfactory bulbs, you could see and compare this compared to our brain, our human brain olfactory bulb. The olfactory bulb compared to how small this brain is, the ratio between the two, it shows you that the animal, the sheep, should have a better sense of smell because their olfactory bulb will be a lot bigger in order for them to be able to have a better sense of smell. Compared to our olfactory bulbs, compared to the size of our brain, is rather small in comparison. We have the optic nerves that you see here on either side, and right where it connects right here is the optic chiasma. Okay, and if we go posterior to it, notice how it splits up again on either side. Let me use a little pointer here. right, on either sides over here. This side over here and this side over here would be the optic tract. So optic nerves, optic chiasma, and then optic tract. You can also see there's these two little bumps over here, and that's on the anterior side. And since it's on the anterior side, this will be the mammillary body. So if you remember from our lecture or in our lab, we had the optic chiasma. That's going to be on the anterior, the infundibulum right in the middle, and then mammillary bodies on the posterior side. We have the midbrain over here, and then we have the pons over here, okay, and then the rest down here will be the medulla oblongata. Okay, and we're going to do a mid-sagittal cut of it, and so you could be able to see a little bit better. Okay, so pons, and then medulla oblongata. If we look on the superior surface of it, okay, once again the longitudinal fissure, and we could see the cerebellum here. And we look at the cerebellum right down the middle here. This is where the vermis is going to be located at. Okay, and you could see the individual folia, right? The little bumps that you see here are going to be the folia, the little bumps. So vermis once again down the middle here, and then the folia are the little bumps that you see here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do a mid-sagittal cut so we could see the more internal structures next. Okay. So one thing I did forget to mention earlier on was if we look at the midbrain and take a look on the posterior side, you can see that the corpora quadrigemma is located over here. We have the two superior colliculi on top, and then the two inferior colliculi on the bottom here. Okay, so let me just get you on the one side over here. Let me just show it to you from here. So the superior colliculus will just be this big bump that you see here. This huge bump right here. It's the superior colliculus. And then just the inferior one is just a smaller bump on the bottom here. Yeah. So that will be part of the midbrain over here. But before, let's look at some of the structures on top here. First off, this superior structure right here will be the corpus callosum. And then, do you see this little like membrane structure right here? This is that septum pellucidum. And the septum pellucidum on the opposite side will be at lateral ventricle space, and you'll see on the other part of the brain, I'll show it to you. Okay. We're going to go ahead and skip the fornix for now, but you could see, do you see this little black looking structure right here? Okay, that's the chorial plexus of the third ventricle right there. Okay, meaning that space that you see around it is part of the third ventricle then. Let's see if you could see the pineal gland. Kind of, right? This little structure right there. It's the pineal gland. Okay, that's the pineal gland, part of the epithalamus. And then you have the thalamus here. You have the hypothalamus located underneath it here, right? And do you remember what I said about this little hole here is where the infundibulum would be hanging from? So this will be, the pituitary will be underneath it. Okay, so here's the pituitary with the infundibulum hanging from the hypothalamus right here. Okay, so thalamus, the pineal gland, part of the epithalamus here. That will be part of the diencephalon there. We have the midbrain once again, and the midbrain, the superior structure here, this big bump is this superior colliculus, and just a smaller bump right there It's the inferior colliculus. I'll show it to you once again as I rotate it. Right, superior colliculus, rotate it right there, right, and then the smaller bump down here will be the inferior colliculus. Right, if I rotate it, you could kind of see it from here. Inferior colliculus. Okay. We have the pons once again right here, right? If you look at it from the anterior view and mid-sagittal view. And then the rest over here will be the medulla oblongata and then the spinal cord as we continue down. And since we have a mid-sagittal view of the cerebellum, you could actually see the white matter here. And the white matter, excuse me, is the arbor vitae. Let's go ahead and look at the spaces in the brain. Okay, you already know this space here, right? We said that it was being blocked by this structure here, which was that septum pellucidum. So in this one, you can actually see that there's a space beyond that septum pellucidum, and this is the lateral ventricle. And with the lateral ventricle, once again, you could see, what is this black stuff again? That makes the CSF. That's the choroid plexus of the lateral ventricle. You still see the choroid plexus of the third ventricle, which has that space right there. Okay. And then, let's see here. There should be a little space that will lead third ventricle to the fourth ventricle, but I didn't cut it down straight down the middle. Okay, so here's the fourth ventricle right here. Okay, right between the cerebellum and the medulla oblongata, and you could kind of see. I didn't do a great mid-sagittal cut, so you actually don't really see the cerebral aqueduct that well. But you should be able to kind of see it. It would be traveling alongside to get to there. Gonna have to do a more mid-sagittal cut to be able to view that in a second. Let me try to do it so that I don't take off any other structures and stuff. So here I went ahead and took off most of it, and let's see, here you have the third ventricle being where my finger is at, kind of thing. You still have that pineal gland that you see over here, the corporal quadrigemina, the superior colliculus, and the inferior colliculus. That you see from here, superior, inferior, right? And then if there's this little membrane over here that if you take off, notice there's a little groove over here, and this groove is part of that cerebral aqueduct coming from the third ventricle, and then eventually going to the fourth ventricle. If I were to put the cerebellum here back with it, okay. So the fourth ventricle, once again, is that space there. So that's the cerebral aqueduct over here.